that's how this works. You know,
Yeah.
we all hold hands, and then you're rubbing off on all of us, which is a perfect segue. If I could have some microphones brought down. I know I have a Glenn Vilppu story, and I know we all do. So I'm gonna give you a moment to think, but if somebody could, maybe I could start with somebody, and you just tell us your Glenn Vilppu story. We're gonna get you a microphone. A lot of people have things to say with you, Glenn.
Hi. So, I think I owe my wife to Glenn Vilppu and Eleanor. My wife is Johanna Schweiger. She's an Austrian sculptor, and she was curating this gallery outside of Salzburg, and this strange couple walks in with a bunch of little ducklings following along, you know, eating up every word that Glenn had to say. And she told me, she's like, who is this old man? You know, who are these people? We're trying to close, you know. But, Glenn mentioned, I draw a little bit, and opened up his sketchbook and just blew her mind. She had no idea that anyone alive could do this kind of drawing anymore. And Glenn liked her sculpture and said, you really ought to go to LA and talk to Joshua Jacobo, and she did, and that's actually, I owe my wife to Glenn, as well as New Masters Academy. Like you mentioned, Vilppu Academy is Glenn's online school, and I helped him a little bit with that, and then he actually helped us get New Masters Academy going, which is now my day job. So it's my job, my wife, my drawing skills, pretty much everything good I have, I owe to this man, and Eleanor as well. So I love you guys very much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, God. Not often that you can tell you've got a new wife.
Yeah, right?
Well, actually, it was Eleanor.
As usual.
She took, and I was teaching in Austria, and it's sort of a short story, but we went to a show, and it was of sculpture students, and his wife, Johanna, was a teacher of sculpture, and I picked up a conversation with her, and my sketchbook. I draw, and she, at that moment she thought, this is guy's carrying somebody else's book. And then she realized that they were my drawings, and then she took a class from me in Vienna, and the owner talked to her, and she goes, you wanted to come to California, and we're in contacts, and so she says, well, gee, there's New Masters. That's been a long story from there.
It's affected many people's lives.
But it was my spouse. What people don't realize that we travel all over the world. I go nowhere without her. In fact, she's the instigator for so much of what I do. Yeah. I wouldn't do it. I'm a hermit, basically.
Right? Eleanor? Bravo.
Yeah. Every time I say I want to quit something or other, she says, no, it's your duty.
Thank you, Eleanor. Really? So anybody else have a story they want to tell? A Vilppu story? Yeah, we got a couple here.
I just have a small story, but it goes back to what Glenn said, is he's always drawing, and I'm a family member. Glenn is my brother-in-law, and we love him, of course. But even way back, because this is my grown son, but I have a drawing of him when he was about 2 years old on a napkin. Because if Glenn didn't have a piece of paper, he would find something to draw on. And at any family gathering, he would be drawing during dinner or whatever. So I still have that napkin. And that's my story.
Well, I got my start in animation because of Glenn. I was transitioning from another career, and I was learning how to draw, and they said go to the union and take from Glenn Vilppu, and I did. And then I heard at Disney, he said, you were at Disney at the time, and you said that they're looking for women, people who could draw women. And so that's what I kind of specialized in with you, and I submitted my portfolio, but here's the story. My portfolio, one of those big black things, I said that it needed to go to Ed Hansen, which was the wrong name. The name was Dan Hansen, who was head of the animation department. So my portfolio went to Ed Hansen's office, and Glenn came back from lunch. You were sharing a room, or you were nearby, and the guys were all looking at this portfolio saying, hey, this is pretty nice. You see this stuff? It's pretty nice. My portfolio's in the total wrong place. Glenn goes over, he sees it, he says, oh my God, that's Tina's portfolio. Zips it up and hand carries it down to Ed Hansen and says, you need to look at this. So I got a personal, motivation, and I stayed at Disney for 23 years because of you. So
I'm here because of you.
Oh, it's a figure eight, isn't it? Yeah, it's a total figure eight. Mike, I know you've taken from Glenn. Tell me something. Kate, we need a microphone for Kate, please.
Well, first of all, thank you, Glenn, from everybody here. I do effects animation, and now I'm an educator. And I've worked on 25 feature films, but while I was animating effects, some people think that, it's hand-drawn animation, by the way, but some people think effects animators can't draw people. So I was highly motivated to prove to myself and to prove to everybody that I could draw people. So I took so many classes with Glenn in the union, and then in the workshops that they had at Disney, and then when I was at Warner Brothers, you would come over there. Wherever you would teach, I would be right there at your foot, learning. And then eventually, 2D effects animation kind of wound down, and I started teaching animation classes. And after, this is a quick story, I'll make it really quick. This was in the early 2000s. So I've been studying with him on and off for 20 years by then, right? I had the opportunity to teach a life drawing class. And I thought to myself, well, no, I'm a student of life drawing, right? And I can't do that, but I'm teaching animation and drawing, foundational drawing. And so I called up Glenn, and I said, Glenn, they want me to teach a life drawing class. And if I teach this class, I'll have health insurance. And I was divorced and I had 2 young kids. We didn't have health insurance. And here through the Cal State system, I could have health insurance again. And Glenn says to me, he says, Katie, you got 2 kids? You don't have health insurance? It's like, teach the damn class. So I was christened by my dear mentor, and I thank you, and I've been teaching at the Cal States for 16 years now, and so I owe this success career to you. Thank you. And he also gave Mike and me a blessing when he heard that we were together, so we had to get his blessing as well.
Right? I think I saw another hand up there somewhere.
Yeah, because
Mike. Go.
I just, since Kate handed me the microphone, I got to tell you that as an animator, we do need life drawing. And we used to go down to like the basement to just see him draw and to actually be inspired by correct anatomy, which I think working at Disney, I'm known for doing human anatomy drawings like Prince Eric and Belle, like being able to know how to animate a human being because of this guy. That study of human anatomy and proportions makes a big difference. Otherwise, I'd be doing like Simpsons, SpongeBob's, and things like that. And I don't want to do that. I'm glad it's a pleasure to be able to like draw a human figure, and I wouldn't be able to excel if it wasn't for Glenn about the human anatomy. And when you talk about SpongeBob and SquarePants and Simpsons, story is the most important, and that's why I applaud you guys doing that kind of things. So story is the most important, but drawing, if it wasn't for Glenn and Eddie bringing Glenn into the situation, I think it's fantastic. So I applaud you and thank you so
Well, a lot of the stuff I'm going to say, I've actually already said to you, Glenn, when I was talking your ear off at your booth. But when I was getting my start in college, you know, one of the hardest things for me was drawing the human figure, which, you know, you'd think we're humans, we know ourselves, but drawing the human figure was so difficult. So when I took my first life drawing class, like I said, I got your first edition life drawing manual, and I looked at it and was like, whoa, because, you know, your work was amazing, and I have still used your life drawing workbooks to this day. I'm a little embarrassed in front of crowds, I'm sorry guys. You know, and it's just helped me a lot over the years. I still use your books to this day, and really like the new edition of your book. Not trying to sound like a butt kiss or anything, but your work has really helped me over the years, especially become a better artist. Especially during my early years, when I was trying to get my BFA at Cal State Long Beach, and so I just want to thank you for all the work you've put out and all of the teaching material that you've done. It's been a huge help for me, for a lot of people, I'm sure. So thank you.
Yeah, Mike, if you want to go past the microphone to him.
So I'm going to tell a story about Glenn's first overseas class. I was one of the guys who went with him the first time he taught in Italy. The first time he taught here, the classes and the trips he does now. If you ever get a chance to do one of these with Glenn, you have to do it. It's life-changing. But it was a group of us, and we went there. And it's a marvelous experience, because what Glenn does is he wakes up in the morning, we eat, and then we start drawing. And then we travel through Italy or great museums or wherever he happens to be, and he shows you how to see the world. And that's what he's doing. He's not showing you how to draw by going over your lines. He's showing you how to think and how to tell a story and how to compose an image, which was wonderful. But the Glenn story that's going to blow you away is we got to go to the Uffizi. So the greatest museum in the world with more classic paintings than any other museum in the world. We all walk in, and Glenn walks in front of us, and he shows us that the Uffizi is laid out chronologically. It starts at the very beginning of the Renaissance, the room we're in, and works his way through the High Mannerist period. And Glenn does what he does. He walks up to the painting, and he starts telling us not how it was painted, but the story it's trying to tell us. He's breaking it down image by image, story by story. And we're all sitting there just stunned that these paintings are far more complex, they have far greater stories than we ever realized. And as he's doing this, people from all over the world start coming up and standing there, gape-jawed at what he's doing. Of course, Glenn isn't even paying attention to us. He doesn't know we're there. And they're coming up to us and they're saying, who is this the man who runs the museum? Who is this? Shut up, what is this? And he walks through the museum, painting after painting, taking us through not just the Renaissance, but into the minds of the people who were inventing what we call modern mannerism today. And he's got like 70 people following him through the museum, stunned. None of whom speak the same language, and we all knew exactly what he was doing, because how he acts it out and shows it to you. And by the time we got to the end, I realized that the actual guides to the museum, who were supposed to be taking people through, were following Glenn through the museum, learning what these paintings they've been talking about for 20 years were really about. It was brilliant. So Glenn has spent a lifetime not just teaching us how to think like artists, but through example, how to live like artists. Thank you very much.
Can I get another story? Hi, Mark McDonald.
So, I have many stories, and most of them are actually comical. So I'm going to sit because this is about him, not about me. But I wanted to say, from the early days of drawing inside a storage shed in the freezing winter, where he taught me how to draw the perfect derriere. One of the best stories was, I think for like 6 or 7 years, I had a chance to study with him every Saturday. There are 2 classes, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And so I would do this for many, many years, and one of them was a zoo class, and we went to in front of the elephants, and I was talking about it now. Oh, very gentle, very passionate. And in mid-sentence, he stopped and started running. I saw this blur of a man running, taking photos and taking photos. So it's a different time now, but one of the elephants was courting another elephant, and it was astronomical. And Glenn was taking photos and having a good time. And we were all laughing, and then I walked up to him and I said, "Yeah, how did you get so excited? Why are you so excited?" I said, "I've never seen that before." And started to draw. That's Glenn Vilppu. It's like at any age, he is the most excited and happy and curious human being. And that is infectious. He's a very special human being.
I just met him this year, I think. We went to Dylan Struzen's book signing at Book Soup, and they did a part of the documentary where he talks to Floyd. And so I just met you, and I heard about you from Drew, who just thinks the world of you. And my story was what happened yesterday. And my nephews have been carrying their sketchbooks with them, and I'm an artist, and I had a panel here on Friday talking about my art. And I told them some things, but you know, your family is like, yeah, I heard you. They came over to Glenn's booth, saw his drawings, and were just amazed. And I bought the book, you know, the How to Draw book, and then we went and we had dessert at the Daily Grill. And just from the moment that they talked to you and saw what you were doing, they were sketching at the table, and they were using forms, and they were using shapes. And they hadn't been doing that before. So just from the couple of hours in your presence, it changed the way they're drawing. And for me, I am eternally grateful, and you clearly are a teacher. And I'm so happy that I met you. Thank you.
Mark McDonald right there.
Mark Kirkland.
Mark
Yeah.
Kirkland, I'm sorry.
Mike Sedino, I'm here representing The Simpsons.
I know Mark.
Yeah, I started at the tail end of season 1 on The Simpsons, and it was a ragtag outfit of animators. And I was telling somebody, they brought me in to begin directing as a season 2 director. I was an old man at the age of 33, and I had 18-year-olds on my crew. And I was telling someone, for some of them it was their first job in animation, and in some cases I think it was their first job ever. And people often tell me, wow, the early Simpsons looked so different from how they now look. And what happened was producer Gabor Chupo decided we need some help and with our drawing. So Glenn was hired, and it's just thinking about it, I realized Glenn is the only drawing instructor The Simpsons has ever hired. And so a group of us started taking classes with Glenn in the evenings. And I'm in the film saying what I did, which was the barriers went down when we saw him drawing. One of my colleagues is Paul Weed. Maybe some of you know his art. He's a fabulous artist. And Paul says Glenn is the first good drawing teacher he ever had. And the reason was he demonstrated, he drew. Paul had drawing teachers who would talk to the class, but were afraid to draw in front of the class. And Glenn would sit down with each one of us. He'd go from each student with the figure and do a demo drawing next to ours. Later, I took you, Glenn, into my office, and I showed you some scenes that we were animating. And I was pleased to hear when you said, oh, you guys are working in a Renaissance way, because what he saw was our shapes in our characters, volumetric shapes. So we were attempting that, but Glenn, you helped us solidify our look, and here we are 30 years later. And oh, by the way, I was overwhelmed pretty early in my directing career, and I took not enough Glenn classes. But you know what? Almost 30 years later, I'm back in class with Glenn now. So, thank you, Glenn.